Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, Alan is going to cover 3 important topics to ensure that you are not sabotaging your practice success. He's going to cover the value of having a strong brand for your practice. He's also going to look at what are you putting out there about your brand? And what even is your brand? Is your practice really you, or is it your business? Dr. Alan Chong, aka the Spine Doctor, is a spine expert. A practicing chiropractor for over 33 years, he is the owner and director for the Centre of Chiropractic Care in Calgary and the Calgary Spinal Decompression Centre, both in Canada. He's a devoted father, a health and wellness advocate, a home chef, a wine enthusiast, and forever an entrepreneur. His living legacy is all about his new podcast, Practice Mastery for Chiropractors. So sit back and enjoy today's show. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
Hello, this is Dr. Alan Chong here. Today's topic is more geared for a deep dive. Last week, in the last episode, I talked about how important practice mastery is for chiropractors and various healthcare practitioners, especially natural health care practitioners, how important it is to be not only focused, but also have your brand focused and also consistent with what you're doing in your clinic and in your practice. So important to be really understanding the concepts behind that. So today's topic is the number one most common mistake chiropractors and healthcare practitioners make that basically sabotage your practice success. I mean, who wouldn't want better practice success, right? Absolutely. So, when you're talking about practice success, it means a whole bunch of things. So in today's show, I'm going to share some super success secrets, strategies that will help you find out if you're accidentally or maybe subconsciously sabotaging your practice success. In the edited words of Sammy Bundell, learn it, model it, and get it done. Let's go. So today we're going to cover 3 important topics, 3 main subject matters really, that value of a strong brand for chiropractors and healthcare practitioners. So branding is super important. What are you putting out there is a big part of that, number 2. And number 3 is, what is your brand? Is your practice really you? Does it reflect you? If you're the owner, even if you're not the owner, if you're working within the practice, it's a matter of how in tune are you with what's going on. So the lesson is that you've got to have certainty. So let's talk a bit about certainty. So certainty is a word in practice that I learned a long time ago from chiropractic teachers, coaches, and mentors that talked about how certainty is more than just confidence, but it has to do with confidence in your message and in what you're doing and in basically in your practice. So to develop a level of practice mastery, you've got to have a level of certainty in what you're doing. So the 3 parts of certainty that I want to point out are that you've got to have certainty in your external message. In other words, what are you putting out there to all kinds of people? Social media and such out there outside of your clinic or practice scenario, your clinic, for example. Let's just call that outside of your clinic. So it's any print media, it's even your signage on the outside of your door. What does your storefront look like? What impression do people have just before they get into your door? External messaging is certainly your website and all that stuff. Now, having certainty in your internal messaging is has to do with more how you run your clinic, what you say to clients and patients, uh, your literature, your entrance form, your exit forms, if you have any questionnaires that you might have, anything to do with how you run your internal practice, including what your staff or your advocates, hopefully they're your advocates, say not only about you, do they advocate you? Do they brag about you? Do they say how great you are? Or are they just kind of not too excited about getting them booked with you or even your appointments? So that's an example of internal messaging, and in that you've got to really look at what are you saying to your people, right? What are you saying? So those certainty in your uh, beliefs, your languaging, and your practices. For example, when you do an initial assessment, what are you saying to your patient? They already have a really solid impression, or not solid. Maybe they're wavering. Maybe they're thinking, does this person know what they're doing? Does this professional, am I in the right place? So part of certainty is giving that your client, your patient, the the confidence in you by instilling confidence. And again, certainty is deeper than confidence, like some of those other topics that I talked about. So let's dive into the three most common mistakes healthcare practitioners make. So when I say three, I'm going to take one of those and deep dive into that today. But what are three most common mistakes healthcare makes? The top three, I say, and I cover this in my Practice Mastery podcast, episode number 3, when I talk about in detail defining your practice. And so today we're going to touch on that. So the number 3 most common mistake chiropractors and healthcare practitioners make that sabotage your practice. So what are the top 3 things that I determined that from past experience and observing a lot of practitioners, talking to a lot of practitioners, and me myself having done a lot of sabotage and learning, of course, the number 3 practice success sabotage, what holds you back might be, consider this. Number 3 is trying to be all things to all people. Trying to be all things to all people. Does that sound a little bit familiar? So let me talk about a little bit about that, but it's simply um, having to try to please a lot of people, in thinking that, and having no niche in a sense, no niche market, no target specific audience, specific ideal client, ideal patient, and just putting out there, I'll see anybody and everybody, just get in the door because I'm not very busy. Maybe that's the self-talk. And you know that tends to dilute your message in a big huge way, so people don't really know, maybe you yourself don't know who you really want to be helping and who you help the best. Now, number 2 sabotaging mistake for success or lack of success, maybe you're stuck, is inconsistent and often confusing messaging. Does that sound a little bit familiar? Maybe you're not aware of it. Maybe you should record yourself, give a report of findings, and see how on message you might be or may not be. And that's why I recommend in coaching, coaching teams and such, that doing role play is super important for helping you establish more of a consistent message. And it's super important for the client, if you're trying to build a brand, is to have a consistent message, right, Sammy? So the number 1, which I'm going to deep dive into today, common mistake that chiropractors and healthcare practitioners make, and believe me, I've made this a lot, that sabotaged my practice success, held me back, and can hold you back in a big way, is an ill-defined brand and marketing message. For example, so we're going to dive into the internal, the external, and branding, for example, and the aspects of that. So that's our deep dive today. Again, expanding on my Practice Mastery podcast episode number 3, which you can, by the way, go pick it up at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. There'll be a link, I think, describing that, perhaps in the show notes for sure, and wherever you get your podcasts. So you ready to go? So today's show is Deep Dive. What is your most common mistake? What is the most common mistake out there that chiropractors and healthcare practitioners are making probably every day that are sabotaging your practice success and not moving you forward? So, number one in that, this big mistake is an ill-defined brand and marketing message. Now, I talked about certainty. I talked about internal and external marketing. It all relates, right? Obviously. So what do you think when you are talking about your practice? What do you say about your practice? Say you're at an event and people ask, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm Dr. blank, 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 and this is what I do. Well, is that message consistent? Is it catchy? Is it your quick elevator? What's your brand message? I mean, Sammy teaches this stuff all the time. And so really, what do you say to people when you're talking about, what are you going to put out there? And what's your actual brand message, if you will? I'm just going to catch this. So are you consistent? What do you say and what do you do? What kind of healthcare message are you painting? For example, you might be saying, well, you're a wellness expert and your thing is super health, or you're a fitness, or you're yoga, and then you go for lunch with your crowd, say you're at an event and you're eating the worst food and people are watching you. That's part of your brand message. That's what do you think and what do you say? You don't even have to say it. What are you putting out there? So that's going to definitely affect your not only your brand but your what other people's impressions of you are. So I mean, that's an obvious one, but another thing is, do you dress, do you live a lifestyle that's consistent with what your message is? One of my favorite things to ask chiropractors, for example, is how often do you get adjusted? When I'm certainly interviewing associates, or even on a very presumptive basis, talking to someone, maybe they might be associate chiropractor material, is how often do you get adjusted? And I'm shocked at what some people's answers are. Some people's answers are, oh gee, let me think, the last time I was adjusted, in other words, the last time I looked after myself chiropractically was 6 weeks ago, or gee, I haven't really had the opportunity. Well, that's going to eat upon your own recommendation when you say, well, maintenance is once every 3 to 4 weeks, and so you should come in. So, and you yourself haven't been adjusted for 6 or 8 weeks or longer, or you're just getting adjusted only for pain relief. Oh, only when I hurt enough do I get adjusted. Well, what are you saying? You're building a relief practice, because if you're trying to build a wellness care practice, good luck, because you yourself aren't even looking after yourself. I think you get the message. So do I live what I preach? And I mean, that's a classic message right there. So a bit of introspection that we all need to do on a regular basis. I mean, just today today is actually one of my staff have decided to retire from the industry. My front staff, after 6 years, she's worked hard, and not to get into details, but I was really sad when she announced that, of course, because she's excellent and she's super hardworking. And a shout out to Janica today on that. It's her final day of work with us and in the chiropractic industry, and she's going to move on to some other things. But when we had our exit interview, I learned a ton from her. Our staff will tell us lots of things if we ask them, and are open to actually listen to what they have to say. And what I learned from that is to be in more regular touch with my staff, and have a candid conversation where it's a two-way conversation. What do you observe? What's happening? It's not just me reviewing their performance. They're actually should be actually reviewing my performance. And in that exit interview, it was a really good chance to connect. And I recommend that you do that with your staff on a regular basis. And I certainly am going to do that with my newer staff and my new hire, which I'm super excited about. And that's going to be another episode, is hiring, and hiring the right people, and how to look for those right people, and how to get them. And I've had plenty of mishires out there. I call them mishires, where whoops, and sometimes they fire me because they quit, right? So the question to ask about treatments and how often and how regular is, you're going to need to know. How do you know based on recommendations? I mean, certainly we have all in licensed professionals, we have clinical practice guidelines. So, and those are just guidelines, but you really have to believe in your recommendation. For example, if you don't, if you're wishy-washy, even after a first visit, I mean, I know days where I've been off, and meaning that when I do an initial visit, I just didn't nail it. I wasn't solid. I wasn't consistent. Maybe I was distracted. And don't you think your patient, your client, knows something's up, knows there's just a lack of confidence. There isn't that rapport. There isn't that connection. Have you ever felt that? You just don't have the connection with your client when you're doing the initial assessment. Well, hopefully you can restore that one and bring it back, and hopefully your staff are more on point, so that they can help that client be confident to come in for their second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th visit. So that's a big aspect of not sabotaging your practice, is to initially look after yourself, whether it be enough sleep, you know, to be on point, nutrition, looking after yourself. I mean, I hear of a shockingly high number of practitioners, especially dentists for some reason, not to just pick on them, but that don't take a lunch break. They take it whenever, because they think, well, I'll just keep on working through and I'll see more people. Well, I'll tell you, I do not want to go to a dentist that has not eaten all day and I'm their last appointment. Believe me, or a surgeon, or anybody, or a chiropractor who's got my neck in their hands. So think about that from the other perspective. You've got to look after yourself. So that's another health brand. It does your brand represent self-care as well? And what do you do on a consistent basis to look after yourself, including eating, exercising, fitness, etc. So, so I'm going to give you a task. So some of you are already taking notes. If you're in a podcast, please, listening to the podcast or your mobile somewhere, please don't take notes while you're driving, or make sure you're in a safe place. So here's your task. I want you to write out your list of 5 to 10 things and break them down even into things that you can do something about, like maybe that they're personal, self-care, for example, or confidence, or the things that you can work on. So that's one list. And then a few other things, it might be even up to 5 to 10 things that you can tweak and change in your clinic or practice situation. In other words, you have an influence on, but you're going to need to work on, whether it be staff, messaging, signage, cleanup, cleaning. That's a big thing. We outright say, and have my staff say, one of the reasons to come and see us, we are a modern, clean, efficient, all those different words. What words describe your practice? Honestly, when you take an outside look and you're the secret shopper walking in. Now, a great example of that is to kind of do a reset and say, walk in being very observant about, is there trash? Is there garbage lying around? What does the front desk look like behind the front desk? We have a rule, no food up at the front, because this is a healthcare setting, especially with COVID times. You just can't have stuff all around. So, I mean, these are exceptional times. Our reception, I think, in my biggest clinic only has 3 chairs because we have to spread it out so much. But your clients and potential clients are looking at all that stuff. Some more than others, but some people are very particular. I am a details person, so sometimes it drives my staff crazy. I see stuff that most people don't see. That makes me a great chiropractor, a great doctor, and but it it also drives some staff crazy. So part of it is working with your staff so they understand your core values and what your brand, our brand, represents, and make sure to make that list, and also summarize by answering the question of, what do you want your brand to really be? Who are you? And how do you want your practice to look? What is your ideal practice? That's another big exercise there. But what does your ideal practice look like, and what do you need to do to shift to that? So let's talk a little bit about your brand and marketing message. That's another aspect of whether you're sabotaging, because if your colors and your brand really don't look great from the storefront and your website, it's going to be a lot harder to convert people to come in to even contact you, call you, because in these days, it's Dr. Google that sends me a lot of patients. And of course, if you're doing the right things, it's going to be your internal work, internal marketing, and your staff talk, including you, that generates internal referrals. So Google being external referrals, and your marketing efforts and your social media. Hopefully Google is doing a great job for you. And that's a whole nother topic right there about SEO, but it does have to do a lot with your consistency of your brand, and of course, and then lots of other things that Sammy is the expert, and Sammy's team are experts in that area. So what you can do about internal messaging is to rehearse and to train, and also, as I mentioned earlier, to role play. Super important. In fact, I need to do more role play. You almost can't do enough role play. And part of it is going to be to ask, well, I mean, your staff always want to look good. So it's a matter of trying to determine topics that come up, that, why common scenarios where patients don't book, for example, new patients don't book, You know, that's stuff that needs to be nailed, because you know that when they call you, I teach my staff, every single person that contacts us, whether it be by email or they're just asking what are your hours, or what you know, what are your hours, what do you charge for this or that, they have needs. They wouldn't be calling you, they're calling for themselves or someone else that they want to come and see you. So they're already part way in the door. Are you going to invite them into the door, or are you going to turn them away? And a lot of that is your staff. So if your staff don't like you, or don't like what you're doing, don't really believe in you, then those are serious conversations. I believe that are trainable in most people. In some cases, you know, this is the hard talk. You've got to concede that they are not great staff, and you're going to have to probably let them go. I mean, that is one of the most common mistakes I've had. And again, we're going to have another session on hiring and firing, because you know, I've held on to some staff at times where I really shouldn't have, and you know, certainly not beyond the 90 days, and then there's performance issues. Hard stuff to deal with. You know, those are some of the hardest things to deal with in practice, is staffing. But that's for another day. So you know, your talk, your beliefs, just to summarize, your lifestyle, whether you smoke or not. I mean, I mean, and in Canada and other jurisdictions now, it's whether you have the smell of smoke, or whether you use cannabis products, or other things. I mean, you don't have to, and probably shouldn't be talking about that with your patients, but these are all consistencies, that are your message. What is your message? What do you believe in? Now, just going to touch a little bit upon policies and procedures. Those are an even more deep dive into what your brand represents, because how you run your clinic, basically. Do you have a written policies procedure manual, and is it up to date, reasonably up to date? So in other words, does everybody know what to do about this scenario A, or scenario B, or C, when it comes to fees, for example? Just yesterday, I had a request for a refund, and I thought that was strange. Well, I made it known to my staff that that needs to be cleared at a higher level. I mean, the client was asking for $350 back, so that's not a small chunk of change. So I looked at the file, and I said, well, you know what? And I had to say right in front, right to the patient's wife, actually was in, requesting a refund, and my staff were almost going to hand it out. And I looked over the file and said, well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jones, that's not the real name. You actually are not eligible for a refund. And then, of course, she wasn't very happy, because one of the previous staff, um, who knows, weeks ago, said that, yes, oh yeah, you have this and you're entitled to refund. Well, those are policies and procedures that really needed to be in place, so that even wouldn't have gotten to the place where it was a potential refund. Other things I touched on earlier was patient education, what your signs, your posters, how they're stated. Are they really harsh and strict? Are they way too vague and flaky, so that the patient client doesn't even really know whether you're adhering to rules or not? Now, in COVID times, of course, we take that very seriously, and we are very strict. In fact, one of the examples is, we are happy to and proud to say that we disinfect this, that, and our tables, floors, and every day the floors, for example, and the tables and surfaces, every client, every patient is, and even to point out, for example, when a patient needs to sign something, we point out that please take one of those sanitized pens and sign your name here. those are just subtle examples of how you can, it's your brand. It really is part of your branding. So that's the quick summary. So, internal, external, what's your messaging, your websites, your words, how to build a brand. Of course, with Sammy Blundell, if you need help, contact her. What does your social media say? All those things need to be consistent with your practice, because if not, people that are confused are much less likely to even contact you. So there it is. That is the number one most common mistake. Well, there's a whole bunch of issues in there, but it really comes down to brand and beliefs, your own and your organization's, your whole organization's brand and beliefs. And languaging is the number one mistake that sabotages most of your practice success. And so please do that exercise. And if you need help and coaching, I am a practice coach. I can be reached at highprofitspractice.com. My podcast is highprofitspractice.com/podcast. And of course, you can find my podcast, of course, Practice Mastery Podcast, anywhere where you get your podcasts. So there's my little pitch for my brand new podcast, which of course I'm super excited about, here on Brand Builders Television. I'm happy that you joined us, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you're one step closer to practice mastery. So hope you got a lot out of that. I love and enjoy your comments, and thank you, Sammy Blundell, again for the invite, and look forward to engaging and talking to you and helping you in the future. Bye for now.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.